The conference room on Kepler Station felt impossibly vast as Kim Minho walked through its gleaming doors. 27 species from across the galaxy sat in a perfect circle, their alien forms casting strange shadows under the artificial stars. That served as lighting. Minho straightened his simple black suit and placed his briefcase on the crystalline table, trying not to think about how this moment could change everything for Earth. The air tasted different here, recycled through alien filters that somehow made it feel thin and metallic. He'd been on thousands of diplomatic missions before, but today, his hands trembled slightly as he pulled out his documents. Behind those documents were the hopes of 8 billion humans scattered across Earth and its colonies. Ambassador Kim, came a voice that sounded like grinding stones. The Zarathi delegate, a creature that looked like living coral, gestured with what might have been arms. We gather today to discuss humanity's recent actions. Minho had expected this. Earth's rapid expansion, their aggressive mining operations, their tendency to settle planets without fully understanding the local ecosystems, it had all caught up with them. But humanity had followed every Federation rule, filed every proper form, paid every required fee. Honored delegates, Minho began, his voice echoing despite the room's dampening fields. Humanity has always acted within the bounds of Federation law. Our settlement permits were approved. Our expansion was regulated, but not welcomed, interrupted a voice like breaking glass. The Vorthak representative, tall and thin as a needle, pointed an accusing finger. Your species takes without asking, grows without limit. You consume planets like insects. Heat rose in Minho's cheeks, but he kept his voice steady. We've contributed significantly to Federation science, trade, and defense. Our researchers developed the quantum fold engine. Our traders opened 17 new luxury routes. Our soldiers died defending Altair Prime from the Shadow Fleet just 5 years ago. The room fell silent for a moment. Even the translator devices seemed to pause. Then came the sound of rustling, alien murmurs in a dozen different languages. A new voice spoke, soft like flowing water. The Aquarians rarely participated in debates. Growth has its place, human, but your growth threatens the balance we've maintained for 40,000 years. You double your populations every generation. You terraform worlds others consider sacred. You see empty space where we see living systems. Minho felt something cold settle in his stomach. This wasn't just about territories or trade disputes. This was about fear. They were afraid of humanity's potential. If we might hear from the defense, spoke another voice, this one accompanied by the scent of ozone. Minho nodded gratefully to whatever alien had given him this chance. He opened his briefcase and activated his holographic projector. Images of Earth appeared over the table, not the pristine world the Federation remembered from first contact, but the Earth of today. Cities powered by fusion and surrounded by vertical farms. Forests that stretched further than they had for centuries. Oceans teeming with both natural and enhanced life. Look at what we've done with our own world, Minho said, his voice growing stronger. We nearly destroyed it once, but we learned, we adapted, we became better. Every colony world we've settled now thrives more than before our arrival. We've increased biodiversity. We've enhanced existing ecosystems. We haven't just taken, we've given back in abundance. The holograms shifted to show the colonies. New Sol, where humans and native crystal formations had created the most beautiful cities in the galaxy. Paradise Valley, where Earth crops grew alongside alien plants in perfect harmony. Haven Station, where human and alien children played together in schools that floated among the clouds. We don't see empty space, Minho continued. We see potential. We see futures where all species can thrive together. Yes, we grow quickly. Yes, we expand rapidly. But we do so with care, with respect, with partnerships. The delegates shifted uncomfortably. Some conferred in whispered alien languages. The Zarathi delegate drummed what might have been fingers against the table. Your presentation is compelling, admitted the Vorthak representative. But growth without limit remains growth without limit. The mathematics do not lie. In 1,000 years at your current rate, Human colonies will outnumber all other species combined. Then help us find better ways, Minho pleaded. Guide us. Share your wisdom. Don't abandon us. But he could read the room despite the alien faces. The decision had been made before he'd even walked through the door. This hearing was just a formality, a final gesture to the species they were about to exile. The vote came swiftly. Each delegate announced their decision in their native tongue, the translators converting the words into cold, clinical English. Yes, no, yes, no. The pattern continued around the circle, the tally growing closer than Minho had hoped, but still not close enough. 27 votes, 14 for expulsion, 13 for continued membership. Humanity was out. As the delegates filed from the room, already forgetting the humans they'd just condemned, Minho remained seated. His hands no longer trembled. They'd gone completely numb. Behind him, the massive viewports showed the galaxy stretching endlessly in all directions. Beautiful, infinite, and now completely forbidden to every human being. He knew that back on Earth, Lee Suman was probably monitoring the communications array, waiting for news that would affect billions of lives. Park Ji-hoon would be in the trade centers, not yet knowing that every alien partnership he'd spent years building would be dissolved by tomorrow. Minho stood slowly, gathered his useless documents, and walked toward the door. The galaxy had made its choice. Now humanity would have to make theirs. He took one last look at the chamber where humanity's fate had been decided by creatures who could never understand their drive to grow, to explore, to reach always for something better. Then he stepped through the door, not knowing that this moment would be remembered as the beginning of humanity's greatest triumph. The morning Choi Hun-woo woke up to find his alien colleagues gone. He thought maybe they'd just returned to their home sector for a holiday. The Vorthak had always kept strange schedules, and the beetle-like Krexans never stayed in any place too long. But their workstations were empty. Their personal belongings, gone. Even the exotic plants they'd kept in the lab had vanished overnight. Hyun-woo wandered the empty corridors of Luna Base, his footsteps echoing in spaces that had buzzed with alien chatter just yesterday. The quantum research project they'd been working on for 3 years sat half-finished, its alien components cold and lifeless. Without his colleagues, Hyun-woo couldn't even access the advanced sections of the work. The alien technology required specific genetic markers to operate, and humans simply didn't have them. Back on Earth, Kang Minji stared at her supply charts in growing disbelief. The first disruptions had seemed minor, delayed shipments from the Outer Rim, canceled orders from alien trading partners. But now she could see the pattern clearly. Every single alien supplier had disappeared from their system within the same week. Ma'am? Her assistant, Bae Jong-hoon, looked worried as he entered her office. The fusion power plants are reporting shortages of iridium cores. Without those, we'll lose backup power to half the continent within 2 months. Minji rubbed her temples. Iridium was exclusively mined on Vorthak worlds. Earth had never needed to develop its own sources because trade was so reliable. Now that reliability was gone, and they'd never even considered the possibility. Contact the engineering teams, she said, trying to keep the panic from her voice. We need alternatives, and we need them now. Across the city, Sim Do-hyun was already seeing the effects in his neighborhood. The local market that had sold exotic alien fruits and vegetables for the past 20 years was nearly empty. The Aquarian seafood restaurant had closed overnight. Even the human-owned shops struggled, as many products used alien components or materials. "What's happening, Mr. Sim?" asked old Mrs. Park as she struggled to carry her groceries. "Why is everything so expensive now?" Do-hyun helped her with the bags, noticing how much lighter they were than usual. "Just some trade disputes," he said, gently. "We'll figure it out." But privately, he wasn't so sure. That evening, he called a meeting in the community center. 40 neighbors showed up, more than had attended any gathering in years. Word was spreading that something big was happening, even if the government wasn't saying much yet. "We need to start growing our own food," Do-hyun suggested. "The rooftop gardens, the empty lots, we can use them." "With what seeds?" asked Lee. "Minso," a young mother with 2 children. Half the food we eat comes from off-world now. Then we figure it out. Yoon Sang-ho, a retired farmer, spoke up. My grandmother grew vegetables in the war with nothing but scavenged soil. We can do the same. The room erupted in discussion. Some people were angry, wanting to know why the government hadn't prepared for this. Others were scared, talking about shortages and rising prices. But a surprising number seemed almost excited by the challenge. Meanwhile, social worker Yoon Seo-yeon was dealing with the human cost of the isolation. Calls to her office had tripled in just 2 weeks. Families who had relatives working on alien worlds suddenly couldn't communicate with them. Students whose alien pen pals had stopped responding. Workers whose jobs depended on interstellar trade faced unemployment. The kids are the worst affected, she explained to her supervisor during their weekly meeting. Those who went to school with alien exchange students keep asking when their friends are coming back. The truth was no one knew. The government's official statement was maddeningly vague. Temporary disruption in diplomatic relations. But the streets told a different story. Alien embassies had closed. The spaceport that once handled thousands of alien ships daily now stood almost empty. At the National Emergency Council, the reality was becoming clear. President Lee Jin-ho looked at the reports from every major sector: trade, science, defense, agriculture, energy. The picture they painted was stark. We have perhaps 6 months of critical supplies if we ration carefully, reported Minister of Trade Park Chae-won. After that we adapt, the president said firmly. We've done it before. But privately, even he wondered if that was possible. Humanity had become so intertwined with galactic civilization that pulling apart felt like tearing away parts of themselves. In the weeks that followed, the reality sank in deeper. Restaurants that served alien cuisine closed their doors. Museums, displaying artifacts from other worlds, locked away their collections. Children stopped looking up at the stars with wonder and started looking with sadness. Yet something else was happening too. Communities that had grown apart were coming together. Neighbors who hadn't spoken in years started sharing resources. Scientists from different countries began collaborating more closely than ever before. Hyunwoo, still alone in his lab on Luna Base, made the first breakthrough. Working with Earth-based scientists over quantum communications, they figured out how to recalibrate the alien equipment using human DNA markers. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Minji's team found alternatives to iridium in rare earth metals. They'd be more expensive to mine and process, but it could be done. Do-hyun's neighborhood succeeded in growing vegetables on every available rooftop and balcony. The isolation that was meant to cripple humanity was instead forcing them to rediscover abilities they'd forgotten they had. As the 6th month approached, something had changed. The fear was still there, but so was determination. Looking up at the stars that had once seemed so welcoming, humans no longer saw abandonment. They saw a challenge. And challenges, as humanity had proven throughout history, were meant to be overcome. The galaxy had abandoned them, but perhaps that was exactly what humanity needed to remember who they really were. 3 years had passed since the galaxy turned its back on humanity, and Oji-young stood in what used to be Sao Paulo's alien tech district. Where gleaming alien shops once sold impossible technologies, empty storefronts now reflected broken dreams. But in her small workshop at the end of the street, something amazing was happening. "Hand me that molecular scanner," she called to her assistant, Kim Dae-hoon. Around them, walls were covered with diagrams that looked like artistic chaos but made perfect sense to their trained eyes. Oh Ji-young had been just another materials engineer before the abandonment. Now, she was humanity's last hope for replacing the alien recycling systems that kept their cities clean. The massive Vorthak extractors that processed waste into usable materials had shut down on the day the aliens left, and humanity's trash was piling up everywhere. "The pattern is finally emerging," she muttered, adjusting her equipment. "They use quantum resonance to break molecular bonds, but we can achieve the same thing with focused electromagnetic fields." Her breakthrough came at 3 in the morning. A discovery so simple she laughed until she cried. Humans had been trying to copy alien technology exactly, but they should have been adapting it to human capabilities instead. Across the Pacific, former military officer Nam Kyung-ho was building something entirely different but equally important. The Phoenix colony had been attacked by raiders 6 months ago, humans who'd turned to piracy when trade collapsed. Kyung-ho realized that Earth's scattered settlements needed protection. Every colony, every outpost, every mining station needs to be connected, he explained to the holographic faces gathered in his command center. Representatives from dozens of human worlds floated in blue light around him. "We can't rely on galactic peacekeepers anymore," added Luna Base Commander Park Youngman. "We're on our own now." Kyung-ho's plan was ambitious, a network of defense, platforms and rapid response teams that could coordinate across light years. Using human technology, mostly modified shipping containers equipped with sensors and communication arrays, they began connecting humanity's far-flung outposts. Meanwhile, on Europa, teacher Han So-young faced her own challenges. The ice mining. Families had always been close-knit, but isolation was breaking down even these strong bonds. Children were losing hope, asking questions she couldn't answer. "Why don't the star people come anymore?" 6-year-old Lee Min-jae asked during morning lessons. So-young knelt beside him, looking out the transparent dome at Jupiter's massive form hanging in the black sky. "Sometimes friends grow apart," she said gently, "but that doesn't mean we stop being amazing ourselves." She started a new project called Human Heroes. Every week, children learned about humans who'd done incredible things without any alien help. They studied ancient explorers, scientists, artists, and inventors. Slowly, the children's eyes began to shine with pride instead of abandonment. The real magic happened when communities started connecting with each other in ways they never had before. Video calls that once carried routine trade negotiations now carried families sharing recipes, children showing artwork, and engineers explaining discoveries. Oh Ji-young's recycling breakthrough spread quickly. Within months, modified versions of her design were working in colonies across the galaxy. But more importantly, her success proved something. Humans could innovate when pushed to their limits. In the asteroid belts, miners like Cho Hansel discovered they could extract rare metals more efficiently than alien machines ever had. They developed new techniques using controlled explosions and magnetic separation that alien species, with their different physical capabilities, had never considered. "We think differently because we're built differently," Hansel explained to a group of visiting engineers. "What's hard for them might be easy for us." Food production was another challenge that sparked innovation. Without alien agricultural supplements, Earth's farms struggled initially. But botanist Dr. Kang Young-suk made a startling discovery. Earth plants could be engineered to produce all the nutrients humans needed. "We don't need alien super vegetables," she announced in her viral presentation. "We just need to be smarter about the ones we have." Her team developed vertical farms that could fit in apartment buildings, producing fresh food year-round without soil or massive amounts of water. Children who had never seen dirt could now watch tomatoes growing in their own homes. The changes weren't just technological. Korean traditional music saw a revival as people sought comfort in their roots. Community festivals that had been dormant for decades returned with new energy. Neighbors who had relied on alien service providers started helping each other instead. Nam Kyung-ho's defense network proved its worth when the Titan mining station detected approaching ships of unknown origin. Within hours, response teams from 3 different colonies converged on the location. The ships turned out to be lost human traders, but the fact that help had come so quickly sent a message across human space. No one was alone anymore. "Before the abandonment, we were just part of a massive galactic civilization," observed philosopher Kim Jae-min during a widely watched interview. "We played by their rules, used their technology, followed their lead. Now we're remembering how to be truly human." The proof was everywhere. Asteroid belts that had been barely inhabited now buzzed with human activity. Colonies that had survived on basic supplies were developing local industries. Children who had grown up dreaming of alien worlds now designed vessels to explore human ones. Most surprising was how quickly humans adapted to isolation. Mental health counselor Park Mik-young noticed that after the initial depression, people became more resilient, more creative, more united. Hardship has a way of clarifying what's really important, she observed. We've stopped trying to impress aliens and started impressing ourselves. As the third year ended, humanity looked very different from the species that had been expelled from galactic society. They were tougher, more innovative, and more connected to each other than ever before. Oh Ji-young, now famous across human space, received messages from thousands of young engineers inspired by her work. Nam Kyung-ho's defense network had evolved into a trade network, connecting human worlds more efficiently than the old galactic routes ever had. But perhaps Han So-young saw the biggest change. Her students no longer asked about the star people. Instead, they asked how soon they could become explorers, inventors, and leaders themselves. Looking at the stars from her classroom dome, So-young smiled. The galaxy had abandoned humanity, thinking they would wither without alien support. Instead, humans had bloomed like flowers after a fire, stronger and more beautiful than before. The ashes of abandonment had become the soil for humanity's greatest renaissance. 7 years after the abandonment, Commander Lim Tai-hoon was making his morning rounds on Phoenix Colony when the first alert came in. The defense sensors originally designed to track asteroids were screaming warnings at frequencies that hurt his ears. "Sir, we have multiple contacts incoming," reported Lieutenant Park Ye-jin from the command center. Her voice was steady, but Tae-hoon could hear the underlying tension. Estimated arrival in 4 hours. Tae-hoon rushed to the main display where dozens of red dots were approaching Phoenix Colony, Haven Station, and New Seoul simultaneously. The attack patterns were too coordinated to be pirates or raiders. Someone had planned this very carefully. "Get me Nam Kyung-ho," he ordered. Within minutes, the Defense Network Coordinator's face appeared on screen from his base on Titan. "We're seeing the same thing." Nam's expression was grim. 17 ships approaching Phoenix, 12 at Haven, 23 heading for New Seoul. They're using formation patterns I've never seen before. Dr. Bae Yoonjin was working late in her weapons research lab on Luna when the emergency alert reached her. Most people thought she was just another materials scientist, but the truth was different. For 3 years, she'd been developing weapons, using purely human technology, preparing for the day someone might decide to deal with the isolated humans. "Finally," she muttered, not with pleasure but with determination. Her weapons were untested but based on solid physics. Accelerated matter projectiles that used salvaged alien ship components to achieve incredible speeds. Energy discharge systems, powered by human fusion technology. They weren't pretty, but they might just work. On Phoenix Colony, colonist Jung Min-jung was helping her neighbor fix a broken water recycler when the evacuation sirens began. She'd been through drills plenty of times, but this felt different. People moved with real urgency, not the half-hearted responses of practice runs. "Mom, what's happening?" her 10-year-old son Woo-jin asked as they gathered emergency supplies. "Just some visitors we don't want to see," she said, trying to keep her voice light. But her hands shook as she packed their emergency bag. The attack on Titan Colony 5 years ago had killed dozens of people. Everyone remembered. The first ships arrived at Phoenix with unexpected fury. They didn't attempt communication or make demands. Energy beams lashed out immediately, targeting the colony's power generators and communication arrays. Commander Tae-hoon felt the base shake as the shields absorbed the initial assault. These weren't human shields. They were jury-rigged alien technology that the colonists had figured out how to maintain, but they were holding. "Return fire," he ordered. Dr. Bae's weapons performed better than even she had hoped. The accelerated matter projectiles tore through enemy shields that were designed to stop standard alien weaponry. The attackers' ships, sleek and advanced, suddenly found themselves outgunned by what they'd expected to be primitive human defenses. "They're Shathari," reported Weapons Officer Kim Jong-in, studying the enemy ship designs. "I recognize the hull patterns from the archives." Tae-hoon nodded grimly. The Shathari were one of the species that had voted most strongly for humanity's expulsion. Apparently, exile hadn't been enough for them. At Haven Station, the battle was more personal. The attackers had somehow jammed long-range communications, forcing the defenders to rely on short-range tactical networks that Nam Kyung-ho's people had built over the years. Station Commander Lee Suman found herself face-to-face with Shathari, warriors who had managed to board her station. But her security teams weren't using standard alien weapons. They'd developed electromagnetic pulse guns that disrupted alien cybernetics, and armor made from recycled asteroid metals that proved surprisingly effective. They thought we'd still be using their stuff, panted Security Chief Yang Seok-jin as they cornered a group of invaders. They forgot we've been getting creative. The tide began to turn when Young Min-jong did something unexpected. As an evacuation coordinator, she was supposed to keep people away from the fighting. Instead, she organized civilian engineers to turn mining equipment into weapons. Those drilling lasers can be overcharged, she explained to a group of miners. And our construction mechs can be armed with projectile weapons. Within an hour, the Shathari found themselves fighting not just trained soldiers but entire communities transformed into defenders. Miners used precise laser cuts to disable enemy equipment. Construction crews deployed heavy machinery as improvised tanks. Even children operated drone systems, using skills learned from video games to confuse and distract the attackers. The Shathari had made a critical mistake. They'd attacked humanity expecting to find the same species that had been expelled 7 years ago, dependent on alien technology, divided by distance, weakened by isolation. Instead, they found humans who had learned to make weapons from scrap metal, who could turn mining tools into precision instruments of war, who fought with an intensity born from years of abandonment and frustration. Dr. Bay's breakthrough weapon, the quantum disruptor, proved to be the decisive factor. Unlike alien weapons that relied on complex programming and specific energy types, her device simply tore apart molecular bonds at the quantum level. Shathari armor, designed to deflect energy beams and projectiles, offered no protection against a weapon that attacked matter itself at its most basic level. Their technology is too advanced, Bay explained to Commander Tae-hoon as they watched enemy ships retreating. They over-engineered everything. Our simpler, more direct approach just confused their defenses. The battles at all 3 locations ended within 6 hours. The Shathari retreat was absolute. They fled so quickly they left equipment and even some wounded behind. Intelligence recovered from their ships revealed the truth. This had been intended as a lesson, a demonstration to the galaxy that isolated humans were helpless. Instead, it became a demonstration of human resilience and adaptability. Video feeds from the battles were transmitted across human space, but more importantly, they were intercepted by alien intelligence networks. Within days, the entire galaxy knew. Humanity hadn't just survived isolation, they'd evolved into something more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Jung Min-jong, now recognized as an hero for her civilian defense innovations, received a message from her son after the battle. "Mom, you said they were just visitors we didn't want to see." She ruffled his hair, looking out at the stars where distant alien ships were undoubtedly watching and reevaluating everything they thought they knew about humans. Sometimes Woojin uninvited guests get exactly what they deserve. The attack that was meant to teach humanity humility had instead announced their transformation. The galaxy had abandoned them as weaklings, but the humans who fought back were no longer the species that had been expelled. They were something new, something stronger, and something the galaxy would have to reckon with. 10 years had passed since humanity's expulsion, and Kim Min-ho walked through the same corridor on Kepler Station, where his world had changed forever. But this time, everything was different. The man who entered that conference room a decade ago had walked in as a representative of an isolated species. Today, he carried the authority of a civilization that had proven itself in ways no one could have imagined. The curved walls still gleamed with the same alien architecture, but now Min-ho noticed things he'd missed before. The station showed signs of wear, small cracks where perfect joints had been. Even the mighty Galactic Federation wasn't immune to the passage of time. Yet humanity had spent that same decade growing stronger, not weaker. Behind him walked representatives of humanity's new reality. Oh Ji-young carried a briefcase containing plans for technologies that made alien recycling systems look primitive. Her innovations weren't just different, they were better. Nam Kyung-ho wore the uniform of the Human Defense Coalition, a network that now protected dozens of worlds with efficiency the galactic peacekeepers had never achieved. Dr. Bae Yoonjin carried schematics for defensive systems that had sent the Shathari running in panic. But perhaps most importantly, young diplomat Park Seo-young walked beside them. She represented the new generation, humans who had never known galactic membership, who had grown up proud of humanity's achievements alone. She watched the alien delegates with curiosity but no awe. The conference chamber was fuller than before. Word of humanity's return had spread, and representatives from species who hadn't even attended the original expulsion were now present. Some came out of curiosity, others from fear, many from growing realization that they had made a terrible mistake. The Zarathi delegate who had helped condemn humanity looked visibly older, their coral-like structure showing signs of age. The Vorthak representative was different entirely, a younger, more nervous member of their species who kept glancing at the data tablets they'd received about human military capabilities. Ambassador Kim, spoke the Aquarian delegate, their voice, carrying the same water-like quality but with a note of careful respect. The Federation acknowledges your request for renewed discussion regarding humanity's status. Minho smiled, an expression that didn't reach his eyes. You misunderstand. We're not here to request anything. We're here to offer you something. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The translators worked overtime as delegates expressed their surprise in a dozen different languages. 10 years ago you judged humanity unfit for galactic civilization, Minho continued, activating the holographic projector he'd brought. You saw our growth as dangerous, our expansion as threatening, our nature as incompatible with yours. The first images appeared above the table, not the pleading presentations of a decade ago, but displays of power and achievement that made several delegates shift uncomfortably in their strange chairs. Ships filled the display, not crude human vessels but sleek craft that combined human engineering with salvaged alien technology in ways their original designers never imagined. Cities grew from barren moons, protected by shields that had turned away the Shathari attack, industrial complexes that turned asteroids into raw materials with efficiency that surpassed even the Vorthak's legendary mining operations. You abandoned us, thinking we would fade away without your guidance, Minho said. Instead, we learned to grow without your limitations. Oh Ji-young stepped forward. Our recycling technology can process materials at 97% efficiency, compared to the 78% managed by current galactic standard equipment. We can share this technology. The chamber erupted. Several delegates began speaking at once. The implications were staggering. Waste processing was a critical issue for all spacefaring civilizations. Our defense networks, Nam Kyung-ho added, have achieved something the galaxy has struggled with for millennia. Perfect coordination across interstellar distances without FTL communication delay. We can teach you how. Now, the military representatives were paying attention. The old galactic peacekeeping forces had always struggled with coordination between distant fleets. And our educational systems, Park Seo-young spoke for the first time, her young voice carrying confidence that made the older delegates take notice. Produce citizens who can adapt to any environment, work with any technology, solve problems others consider impossible. Dr. Bae smiled as she added, the Shathari learned about our adaptive capabilities already. We're happy to demonstrate our defensive technologies for anyone who's interested. The Shathari delegate, a different individual from the ones who had attacked, visibly flinched. The presentations continued for hours. Where the original expulsion hearing had been humanity pleading its case, this was humanity showing what it had accomplished in spite of abandonment. Every innovation, every breakthrough, every achievement was something the galaxy could have helped create and could have shared in. During a break, delegates huddled in urgent discussions. The Federation faced a dilemma. Humanity was offering technologies and capabilities they desperately needed, but accepting would mean admitting their original decision had been catastrophically wrong. The Vorthak delegate approached Minho during the intermission. "Your species, you've changed significantly." "No," Minho replied calmly. "We've simply become what we always had the potential to be. You just never gave us the chance to show you." The final session was unlike anything in Federation history. Instead of votes on acceptance or rejection, it became a negotiation between equals. Humanity didn't need the Federation anymore. The Federation needed humanity. The terms were different this time. Humanity would share their innovations, their defensive capabilities, their organizational methods. In return, they wanted equal representation in Federation councils, equal access to all galactic resources, and most importantly, acknowledgement of their sovereign right to grow and expand as they saw fit. "You wanted us to fit into your galaxy," Minho concluded. "Instead, we've outgrown it. We're offering you the chance to grow with us." The vote wasn't about readmission. It was about whether the Federation would accept humanity as a full partner. 27 delegates voted. This time, the result was unanimous. As they left the chamber, Park Seo-young asked Minho, "What do you think will happen now?" Minho looked out at the stars through the massive viewports. Somewhere out there, human ships were already approaching alien worlds with offers of trade and cooperation. Not as supplicants, but as equals. "Now we change the galaxy," he said, "together." The species that had been cast out as too dangerous, too ambitious, too different, had returned as exactly what the galaxy needed to face the challenges ahead. The abandonment that was meant to teach them humility had instead taught them strength, and the stars themselves seemed to shine brighter, welcoming back the children of Earth who had learned to thrive in the darkness between them. Humanity was home again, but this time the galaxy was the one changed by their presence.